The term assault weapon sparks fierce debate, igniting passionate arguments in courtrooms, on the news, and across dinner tables nationwide. It's a phrase that instantly divides opinion, conjuring images of military-style rifles and raising questions about public safety, personal freedom, and the very meaning of the Second Amendment. Yet, despite its prominence in headlines and legislation, its definition is far from clear. The term itself is not rooted in technical firearm classifications, but rather in legal and political language, which often leads to confusion and controversy. In everyday language, assault weapon usually refers to semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15. These firearms are visually similar to military rifles, with black polymer frames and rails for attachments, but they function differently, firing only one round per trigger pull, just like many common hunting rifles. What sets them apart, in the eyes of lawmakers, are features like pistol grips, adjustable stocks, flash suppressors, and detachable magazines. Critics argue these features make the guns more lethal or easier to use in mass shootings, while gun owners insist they're simply ergonomic improvements that make shooting safer and more comfortable. There's no single, universally accepted legal definition of an assault weapon. Instead, the rules vary dramatically from state to state. Some states ban specific models by name, while others restrict guns based on a list of features. This creates a confusing patchwork of laws that can change from one city or county to the next. Supporters of assault weapon bans see these firearms as tools of mass violence, often pointing to their use in high-profile shootings and arguing that restricting access could save lives and prevent future tragedies. On the other side, opponents view these rifles as modern sporting arms, used for hunting, target shooting, and home defense. They argue that bans infringe on constitutional rights and punish law-abiding citizens, rather than addressing the root causes of violence. Ultimately, the debate over assault weapons is less about the technical details of the guns themselves and more about deeply held beliefs regarding safety, liberty, and the proper role of government in regulating firearms. What's legal in one state could be a serious crime in another, leaving both citizens and law enforcement to navigate a shifting, often bewildering legal maze. This uncertainty can lead to accidental violations and ongoing confusion about what is allowed. Now, this fundamental divide over the meaning and regulation of assault weapons is at the heart of a major Supreme Court showdown, one that could reshape America's gun laws for generations to come. Connecticut's strict assault weapon ban was born from tragedy, a moment that would forever change the state and spark a national conversation about gun control. The catalyst was the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, where 20 children and 6 educators lost their lives in one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. The horror and heartbreak reverberated far beyond Connecticut, igniting urgent calls for reform. In response, Connecticut lawmakers acted swiftly, passing one of the nation's toughest gun laws. The legislation banned over 100 models of so-called assault weapons, including the AR-15, and imposed a strict limit on magazine capacity, capping it at 10 rounds. The law was designed to prevent future tragedies and send a message that the state would not tolerate such violence. Existing owners were allowed to keep their firearms, but only if they registered them with the state. New sales and transfers of these weapons were completely banned, and gun stores had to adapt to the new regulations almost overnight. Almost immediately, gun rights groups challenged the law in court. They argued that the ban violated the Second Amendment by prohibiting the most popular rifle in America, and that it unfairly targeted law-abiding citizens. Plaintiffs insisted that millions of Americans use the AR-15 and similar rifles for lawful purposes, such as sport shooting, hunting, and home defense. They warned that banning these firearms could set a dangerous precedent, threatening the rights of responsible gun owners everywhere. The state, however, stood firm. Officials defended the law as a necessary public safety measure, arguing that the Second Amendment does not guarantee access to every type of weapon. They maintained that restricting access to high-capacity, military-style firearms was essential to protect communities from mass shootings. For over a decade, this legal battle has played out in the courts, with both sides refusing to back down. Now the fight has reached its highest stage, a direct appeal to the Supreme Court, where the stakes could not be higher. The outcome of this case could reshape gun laws not just in Connecticut, but across the entire nation, setting a precedent for how far states can go in regulating firearms and balancing public safety with constitutional rights. At the core of the assault weapon debate is the Second Amendment, a cornerstone of American constitutional law. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This single sentence has sparked countless interpretations and legal battles over the years. Gun rights advocates argue this protects an individual's right to own firearms for self-defense, not just for militia service. They believe that owning a gun is a fundamental personal freedom. They see any significant restriction as a direct attack on constitutional liberty. To them, the right to bear arms is as essential as freedom of speech or religion. Gun control supporters counter that the amendment's reference to a well-regulated militia allows for reasonable regulations, especially for weapons the founders never imagined. They argue that modern firearms, vastly more powerful than 18th century muskets, necessitate updated laws. The Supreme Court's 2008 Heller decision confirmed an individual right to own guns for self-defense, but also said this right isn't unlimited. The ruling acknowledged that certain restrictions could be justified. Laws can still restrict certain weapons or ownership in the interest of public safety. This includes measures like background checks, waiting periods, and bans on specific types of firearms. This tension, individual rights versus regulation, remains unresolved, fueling today's legal battles. Both sides continue to passionately defend their interpretations of the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court's next move could finally tip the balance, potentially reshaping the landscape of American gun laws for generations to come. Connecticut's ban faced immediate legal challenges, with gun rights advocates arguing it violated the Second Amendment. Both the district and appeals courts sided with the state, ruling that AR-15-style rifles were unusually dangerous and not commonly used for self-defense. Gun rights groups, undeterred, appealed to the Supreme Court, claiming lower courts misapplied key precedents. Their petition argues that only the Supreme Court can resolve the confusion over how to judge these bans. The justices must now decide whether to take the case and potentially set a national standard. The outcome could clarify, or further complicate, the future of gun regulation in America. All eyes are on the court. Supporters of assault weapon bans argue these guns are designed for rapid mass killing and have been used in America's deadliest shootings. They believe banning them will save lives and that public safety outweighs any individual's desire to own such firearms. Opponents counter that AR-15s are the most popular rifles in the country, used lawfully by millions for sport and self-defense. They argue that banning them based on appearance is irrational and violates the Second Amendment. Gun rights advocates point to Supreme Court precedent. If a firearm is in common use, it can't be banned. For them, the real issue is not the gun, but the right to self-defense and the dangers of government overreach. Both sides see the stakes as existential, either for public safety or for constitutional freedom. The Supreme Court's decision could redefine the balance. Two Supreme Court cases, Heller, 2008, and Bruin, 2022, now shape all gun law debates. Heller established an individual right to own firearms for self-defense, but allowed for some restrictions, especially on dangerous and unusual weapons. The key test: if a gun is in common use for lawful purposes, it can't be banned. Bruin changed the game, requiring gun laws to fit within America's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Now the government must prove any restriction has roots in history, not just that it serves public safety. This new standard has made it harder to defend modern gun bans in court. Plaintiffs in the Connecticut case argue there's no historical precedent for banning the most common rifles. The Supreme Court's interpretation of these precedents will decide the fate of assault weapon bans. The Supreme Court has recently declined to hear challenges to similar bans, leaving lower court rulings in place. For now, Justices Thomas and Kavanaugh have signaled the court should soon address the constitutionality of assault weapon bans directly. The Connecticut case, now before the court, highlights confusion among lower courts over how to apply the Bruin standard. Meanwhile, the court is considering other major gun cases, showing its ongoing interest in Second Amendment boundaries. A decision to hear the Connecticut case could finally bring clarity to a fractured legal landscape. If the court declines, the patchwork of state laws will persist, fueling more lawsuits and uncertainty. The nation waits for a signal from the justices. The stakes have never been higher. The Supreme Court's next move on assault weapon bans will shape American gun rights for generations. If the court strikes down Connecticut's law, similar bans across the country could fall, cementing the right to own AR-15s and other popular rifles. A narrower ruling could set new standards for what counts as a dangerous and unusual weapon, making bans harder to defend. If the court upholds the ban, states could have broad authority to restrict certain firearms, creating a major exception to recent gun rights victories. Declining to hear the case would leave the legal patchwork in place, but likely only temporarily. With millions watching, the court's decision will echo through every community, affecting not just gun owners, but the very meaning of the Second Amendment. The pressure for clarity is immense. The nation waits for a historic ruling,